All right, let's start it back up, Manny.
Yeah.
I think we're good to go. I think we're good. I think we got it working. So we can kick it off with a little bit of lineup study here. Let's see. Just do me a favor. Talk real quick.
Yo, Awesemo gang. What's up, baby? Hope you guys can hear me. Hello.
All right. Should be all right. Let's see.
We see my mic moving.
Oh, we're good. We're good, baby. No. It should have been working the whole time. I don't know what was going on, but we good. Glad to have you guys back with us. Let's go ahead and tweet. Let me tweet this new link out.
So weird. We didn't change anything. At least I don't think we did.
Nothing at all. So that's all right. I'm going to put the new link on Twitter, and
cool.
We should be good. And that's kind of strange. Literally didn't change any settings, but that's okay. So we can start off with a little bit of lineup study and take a look at what went right, what went wrong. We do that each and every week. The big thing here, man, if you didn't stack New Orleans and San Francisco early on, man, I didn't have a lot of Jared Cook. He got hurt. Had he not gotten hurt, that could have been, oh my God, even worse. He had 2 touchdowns and 20 fantasy points in like the first 8 minutes of that game. Just really outrageous seeing the type of shootout that it was. 2 very good defensive teams, but also 2 good offensive teams. And defense just did not show up for any period of that game. It was a track meet through 60 minutes.
Yeah, no, it was just scoring after scoring after scoring. After the first half, I looked at all my Breeze lineups and I saw, because Michael Thomas did most of his work in the second half, right? And it was just, okay, well, I have most of these stacks with Michael Thomas. I had a few Cook ones going, and I felt okay that I was probably still alive, but he ended up going down. He didn't continue to play the whole game. So it was for a long portion of that game, it was just frustrating because none of my guys would do much. I didn't have much Emmanuel Sanders, and no Garoppolo at all. So it was just one of those games where it's like, well, they keep running up the score. Hopefully everyone stacked players, and those stacked players don't do anything. Thank goodness Cook went out, and I saw a Traquan touchdown. I think Hill got it, or someone else random got in the end zone. I was like, oh man, I think we're dodging bullets here. But at the end, no, it was just way too much to catch up to.
Yeah, Hill got in, almost had 2. Manny Sanders threw a touchdown, had a long touchdown where he fell and wasn't touched, got back up and scored. I mean, dude, it was an insane game. And I got to tell you, dude, Alvin Kamara. Like,
I don't know what it is with this guy, man.
Well, first of all, this was a brutal matchup. He was cheap, though, so I get it. But this is a really, really tough spot. A team that does not really allow any receiving yards to opposing running backs. But 13 carries, 25 yards, 18 yards on 4 receptions and 6 targets. He had, 19 total looks and 43 total yards. That's about as bad as it gets. You know the worst part about this, though, dude? You had a 44.5 over-under. Saints had a 23 implied total. If Alvin Kamara finished with 7 in a game that was like 20-17, 23-21, you're like, all right, that sucks, but nobody did anything. Everyone went off. Like, everyone went off except for Alvin Kamara. I mean, even Latavius Murray had 6 or 7 for 69, 2 for 25 receiving. He had a better game. He had 7, 8, 9. He had like 4 or 5 more fantasy points than Kamara.
Do we want to just say Kamara's, I don't want to say even clearly injured because he's still playing, but he just doesn't look right. He's not making people miss in the open field. It's not really open field because I was watching that game and I saw pretty much all of Kamara's touches, and it was every time he would get the ball or touch the ball, a defender was instantly on him. You know what I mean? Like, he didn't even have a chance to take 2 steps, and at some point, I don't even want to cut him some slack because he hasn't been doing anything. I've just been losing money playing him. But it feels like he's like kind of frustrated. It almost looks like he's frustrated out there. You know what I mean? Like, he'll get a carry. There's literally no holes. He gets stopped in less than a second. And then Latavius comes in and there's a gaping hole right in the middle and he goes for 15 yards, and it's just like, why can't Kamara get that, right? And then at the goal line, Kamara's almost never in there. Not to mention they always go to like Taysom Hill or some random person at the goal line, Cook or something, to where he never even gets goal line carries. Like it's to the point where, man, this is tough. I know he got stopped at the one on one of them, but even then, I give him the touchdown. The guy still barely did anything yesterday, and yeah, that's 2 weeks in a row now where I get it. San Fran's a tough matchup, maybe through the air, but through the ground, he should have had some holes to run through, and he just didn't.
Mike Campbell says, "LOL, Garoppolo and Breeze weren't even high owned on DraftKings." No, and that's what made this game so much more necessary to take down big tournaments. And
yeah, no, and it's what catapults people, right? Like it's the low owned guys that have really big games that just make these lineups stand out from all the rest. You still need to be different. So I talked about how being different, even when guys aren't high owned, is still an important part of fantasy. So most of the quarterbacks were around 10% owned yesterday, and even then, going down to a guy that's 5% owned can go a really long way in these large field tournaments. And if you went down to Breeze, if you went down to Garoppolo, you had a monster night.
Yeah, you didn't need these guys to cash, and you're right about that,
sure.
Mike. To win, you needed a piece of this game. And you saw the guy who won the Millie Maker. You know how many lineups he had?
One. Mm-hmm.
One lineup. And, you pointed this out. If you don't listen, you should definitely check it out. Manny and I have a really fun show Sunday night on Sirius XM Fantasy, Sirius 210 XM 87 from 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern. We break down everything. We get, when we have good weeks, it's great. When we have bad weeks, it's great for the listeners because we, talk a lot of shit and really just go over everything. But moreover, you had talked about this game. Or the lineup, the Millie Maker winning lineup, like as it happened. And yes, Jason AP, he said Mayfield burned me. He's just so bad. How much time did we spend on that on yesterday's show? He's bad.
Forever.
Dude, and he's killing Odell Beckham.
It's horrible. It's horrible.
Yeah, 2 interceptions. The one got overturned, or they ruled it an incompletion. But the go ahead, and I got it pulled up. Talk to me about this ridiculous winning lineup from the Millie Maker. And I'm not talking bad on it at all. It's just amazing that he ended up on some of these guys. Not that he ended up on them, but in the same lineup, he had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 players below 6%.
Yeah, here's another thing, because there's a debate going on Twitter right now about how quote unquote bad the lineup was, and we talked about it yesterday. Just because we probably wouldn't land here with some of these plays doesn't mean it was a bad lineup per se, right? And how many times have we seen where it doesn't necessarily have to be a game stack that goes off, right? Like in theory, if you had Garoppolo to Sanders and you ran it back with Michael Thomas, phenomenal, great job, and you have a really good lineup there. But you don't have to do that, and that isn't the only way or the only thing that constitutes a good lineup, right? A good lineup is one where you have correlation, right? And you have good plays that can get you to where you need to get to. And if you just analyze all plays individually, the lineup still used $50K in salary, if I believe, right? Mm-hmm. It still used most of the salary. So if we're just going to say that because he didn't run it back or whatever, it's not a good lineup, like, I don't know about that. I think he used 49,800. So for me, it's do you have a stack in there? A good one at that. And when you run the numbers in hindsight and just kind of project everyone, see how often they get to a target score or whatever, Garoppolo to Manny Sanders actually wasn't a bad pairing at all. Just it was, I don't know, the 10th best pairing out of the board maybe. And I still think that's fine. If you're running 10, 15 QBs, you should have gotten to Garoppolo to Sanders, at least in some form. If you got to Kittle, that's the only one on the other team, on the Niners that I thought was – I thought he was better than Sanders, so I went with Kittle. But Sanders was on – or at least supposed to be on your board if you're an MME player. How you did that with one lineup, that's a different story.
Right.
But the lineup specifically, Ekeler, was he a bad play? No. but he wasn't the best play. He wasn't a bad play at all. Did you expect him to go for 37? Of course not. Aaron Jones, was he a bad play? Of course not. But is McCaffrey, did Fournette beforehand? Did Bilal Powell offer better value? Sure, doesn't mean Aaron Jones is a bad play. You know what I mean? So there were a ton of good plays. They were just so low owned that it was really tough with especially one lineup to get here. I just truly don't think it's a bad lineup. It's a very well-made lineup in my opinion.
I loved Aaron Jones yesterday. I talked about it on the Deeper Dive. The reason is simple. When Aaron Jones has good games, he has huge games. And when you're looking at it in tournaments, the dude's ceiling's absurd. You know, he's going to have some ugly games. This could have just as easily been a 6 fantasy point Aaron Jones game, but it wasn't. So I really liked Aaron Jones, really liked A.J. Brown. I think I had like 20% A.J. Brown. I think 20% Aaron Jones. But I didn't really have much of the San Francisco game outside of George Kittle and some Michael Thomas. It was the one that stands out to me, right, is not James White. I like James White. Is not the Steelers. And by the way, like you said, just because I might not like someone doesn't mean that it was the wrong move. Right. But in my head, I'm processing like, what could I have gotten to? I could see getting to Garoppolo and Emmanuel Sanders. That to me isn't crazy, especially given their price points and knowing that Sanders has been very good since he got to San Francisco. So I get that. Somebody mentioned, I don't know how he landed on Sanders. It's not the craziest. I mean, Marshawn Lattimore was going to see most of him, but at the same time, Lattimore's season has not been great. And this is a pretty potent offense, even in a tough spot. The one to me was Austin Ekeler at 6,300. Look, you can say whatever you want, but I still don't know how you get to Austin Ekeler at 6,300. That was the one that I looked at and said, wow, he spent $6,300 on Austin Ekeler, and Austin Ekeler has had some solid games. But he wasn't popping for me at all is what it came down to.
Yeah, for sure. It's how I kind of put it is because I love weeks like this where, you know, something like this wins because it's all relative to the slate, right? There wasn't anyone coming into the slate that was going to be 30, 40, 50, apart from Bilal Powell. There wasn't anyone that we projected to be like, 30, 40, 50% owned. And by default, every quarterback was hovering around 10% or less. The receivers were at, 15, maybe one got to 20 or less. Like there wasn't guys that were through the roof that you needed to have. There wasn't that standout chalk. And the reason why that was because there were so many plays that were all pretty decent for the slate. Like they were all around the same spot, right? Like at the top, I talked yesterday about who do you want, Michael Thomas, DeAndre Hopkins, or Devontae Adams. They're pretty much all the same. They're all almost priced around the same, and they all have the same ownership heading into the slate. Like, to say which one is better than the other, I mean, they were all around the same. So you could see why they were all hovering around the same ownership, right? Well, in the mid-tier, it was identical. And in the low tier, the value tier, it was identical too, with the one standout being Bilal Powell. And it was like, well, if that's going to be the case, there's going to be a lot of really under-owned players this week. And it wouldn't be crazy to see someone take it down with 5%ers, 4%ers, and where your highest guy is probably 10%. For me, Austin Ekeler had somewhere around a 15-ish projection on PPR sites. So it's not like I had him projected for 10, right? I had him projected for a decent amount, but are you going to get to him before you get to McCaffrey, before you get to Powell, before you get to Cook or Fournette or Chubb or Devontae Freeman or all these guys? No, you were not going to get there. Doesn't mean he's a bad play, though. There were just like 10 really good plays at running back. He was probably like the 8th, 9th, or 10th, but he wasn't bad. It was just really tough to land on it. What I think is even more impressive, to be honest, about the lineup is that I can't reiterate how hard this is, but to land on such a, I'd say, even good lineup with one entry, man. Yeah. I don't know how you
5 from Austin Hooper.
Yep. I don't know how you do that. That was the most impressive thing out about the whole thing was one lineup.
Luck?
I don't want to say luck because it really, I genuinely think it's a good lineup, man. All these guys should have been on your radar at some point or another, right? Maybe not top plays at their position, but should have been in your radar.
I'm saying to win in
that fashion, of course, yeah, you have to have
176 entry field with one lineup. against people that are running 150 clearly
You definitely
takes
need some luck.
a
Yeah.
little bit of luck. Anyway, the guy that came in second place had 150 lineups. And let's take a look at his exposure. The second place lineup was Garoppolo. And by the way, he had one that came in second place. He had one that came in 20th, 40th, 50th, 89th. Wow. Wow, 6 in the top 100. That is so difficult to do.
Yep.
Garoppolo, Ekeler again, McCoy, Hopkins, Sanders, Michael Thomas, Kittle, DeAndre Washington, and the Falcons. So monster game stack here. Well, no, actually pretty basic. Yeah, 3-man with including quarterback, running it back with Thomas. You got 19 from Kittle, 33 from Thomas, 37 from Sanders, 32 from Ekeler or from Garoppolo, 5 from LaShawn McCoy. So another lineup with a 5 spot, but got DeAndre Washington in there. I wonder who he had in there before. Maybe like a Jonnu Smith or something. Jonnu Smith was also $3,000.
The guy used 61% of Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yeah, that's crazy.
How on earth?
He played 95% Kittle. That's weird. Look, it's showing small forward, point guard. That's interesting. When you pull up player usage, it has all and then basketball positions next to it. Huh. Look at that. 93% Michael Thomas, 95% Kittle, 61% Garoppolo, 38% Debo. He just went with a full-out Saints-Niners onslaught. And it literally could not have worked out any better than it did.
I bet you the guy was sitting on his couch just seeing every touchdown go in, just like, go, more. And they would score in like 4 or 5 plays. It was like 4 or 5 plays one way, 4 or 5 plays the other way, and they just kept going back and forth in that first half. It was like, this is not stopping, is it? It's just never going to stop.
Crazy, man. He had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 6 of his 12 highest exposed guys were from the same game.
Yep, it's sometimes I've seen a few players like this take like really big risks with 1 or 2 games specifically, and it's extremely risky, but the payoff is something like this, right? It's something like this to where you can have 6 entries in the top 100 of a Millie Maker if you hit the perfect scenario. And how often are you going to hit the perfect scenario? I don't know. To the point where I feel like most people will probably go broke doing some sort of strategy like this. Or if you could withstand the swings, sure, maybe. But I really don't understand how you can just continue to do something like this often and hope that just one day you're going to hit. But in this case, dude, the guy hit, and the guy hit for a pretty massive win, the biggest win you can hit. So at least really close to it. So good for him.
Shall we see the luxury box, Manny? Let's take a look what happened in the luxury box. Oh, look at that. Chipotle Addict. First place. Wilson, second. Mr. Good Seats, Wakey. Well, all 4 of these guys are players that we know exactly who they are.
Yep.
That's the first thing out of the gate. So Chipotle Addict played 1, 2, 3, 4. He played 7 lineups. I think it was a 7-entry max. Yeah, 7-entry max. And see, it won't let us see
Played 6 quarterbacks.
We talked about this last week, right?
Yep. It's if you have limited entries, I always recommend to have a different quarterback in each. He played 2 Derek Carr lineups for whatever reason. Maybe the late swap with Washington or with Jacobs out of the mix kind of bumped up Carr for him for some reason. I don't know. Maybe that's why he landed there. But Breeze, Garoppolo, Tannehill were part of that 6.
There you go. That's what you see all of the time.
Yep.
Try and mix up your quarterbacks in these contests. It gives you, it allows you to spread it out, and then you end up hitting on one of them. And the one that he hit on was Breeze, Bilal Powell, which, I said this last week too. What you see in these high dollar ones, but you can apply it towards like, a $50 5 max or whatever,
yeah,
is very concentrated running back exposures. Look at this. Yep. Bilal Powell and Kamara are either one. Bilal Powell he had in every single lineup. Right. He had Kamara in, looks like two.
Two.
I want to make sure he wasn't in the flex anywhere.
Yeah, he wasn't
in two. And then a couple Devonta Freeman, a couple Christian McCaffrey.
If you click the player usage all the way on the right side, it'll give you his ownerships.
No, I know. For some reason on my screen, you can only see all. It's showing point guards, shooting guards.
Because you were in NBA before. Just refresh exactly on the page you're at, and you'll get them.
Never had that happen.
So if you just refresh it, yeah, you'll just refresh. Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah. I mean, the exposure, that's what I always use for it, but it's kind of odd that was showing up. So all right, we lost it. But anyway, what was his wide receiver exposure looking like? Did he spread that out as well?
Yeah, he did. So he had about 57% Mike Thomas. Because he had so much Derek Carr, I think Tyrell Williams was the play there. Godwin, Corey Davis. I was also on that Corey Davis train. We just hit the wrong person. Kirk, Campbell, Edelman, Stills were his top guys. But all it takes is one, man. We talk about that a lot too.
Take a look at Wilson here. Another really good player. Likable fella too. So he went with 4 different quarterbacks in 5 lineups.
Yep.
Right? Same pattern you see. He didn't have any Breeze or any Garoppolo. Still finished second. So let's take a look. Tannehill, which was a big game again. Aaron Jones, Bilal Powell, A.J. Brown, DeAndre Hopkins, Ryan Anderson, Darren Waller, Alvin Kamara, and the Texans. So one thing that stands out here was just a 2-player team stack, right, with Tannehill and A.J. Brown. Running it back with Darren Waller.
Fantastic. Loved it. Very underrated. He also had Aaron Jones in that lineup too, man. So with Hopkins and Anderson. So a little bit of what we saw in the Millie Maker winner in that lineup. And it's just guys that were just really underowned, but still in really good spots, man. Like to me, that's a very good lineup as well too. And you landed on, so the reason some landed on A.J. Brown, let me clarify this, because I told you yesterday that I landed on a lot of Corey Davis, and your initial response was, "Why Corey Davis?" And I was like, "Well, I mean, I'm an FC baby, and how FC works is it's pretty much just going to give you the highest projected lineup every single time, right? So in doing this, it has maybe some stuff which it isn't really a flaw. You just have to take note that it's happening and kind of do a little bit of manual work, if you will. Again, just pressing any random button to click optimize and win millions, that doesn't exist anywhere, right? You have to put in some of the work. And the highest projected guy was A.J. Brown. The highest value guy, or point per dollar, however you want to call it, was Corey Davis. And because of that, you're going to get Tannehill to Corey Davis and then have all the studs around them to give you a high projected lineup. So while you see some have, and it's more the manual, the guys who do it by hand probably didn't get that wrong. The guys who run a ton of lineups like Chipotle will probably get that wrong more times than not. So it's one of those things to where, can we still continue to improve? Heck yeah. And if you're analyzing and making everything by hand and you see every detail you make, you would have gotten to A.J. Brown pretty clearly. Now, what I think makes the very best players of the world the best is they can have all this hand-build attention in an optimizer and do it 150 times over and over and over. That's what makes, I think, the very best players in the game.
Okay. Yeah, and Wilson cashed only 1 of 5 lineups, but it was for $100,000. And he actually spread his running backs out more than you would see with most. He did have 5 Kamara, though, so not really. It wasn't that crazy spread out. Tight ends, 3 O.J. Howard, 1 Doyle, 1 Kelsey, 1 Waller. And then defense, 2 Texans. That wasn't great. That was just a huge shock. I mean, one of the biggest surprises of the season, really, right? And do you know he had a -1 from the Texans in the lineup that got him $100,000?
My goodness.
How about that, huh?
That's insane. That's pretty brutal. He also lost by 1, not even 1 point, by 0.3.
Yep. And the Texans had -1.
Texans do anything. That's
crazy, man.
That's insane, man.
Take a look at Mr. Good Seats as well. He played 3 lineups. Quarterback usage, He went 2 Breeze, 1 Garoppolo. So look at that. He went
Stud.
straight out of this game. You look back on it and it makes sense, like, to go Thomas here, because even though it's a tough matchup, Thomas is just the guy. But what's interesting here is Alvin Kamara, he had him in all 3 lineups. If I'm stacking this game with Breeze, like, how am I not going heavy Alvin Kamara? Because it's so, you would want to have a little bit of Jared Cook if Breeze is your quarterback. You'd want to have a little bit of, maybe Ted Ginn, but like Kamara and Thomas are clearly your go-to options here. And he didn't have any Jared Cook. It was just Michael Thomas and Kamara in all 3 lineups. And then 3 George Kittle. So in both of the Breeze lineups, he ran it back with Kittle. No no Emmanuel Sanders or anyone else. It was George Kittle and Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara. That was what he ran with, and he had Bilal Powell. I really loved Bilal Powell yesterday, and I told you why I stand by this 100%. The dude saw 21 total looks. If you're going to pretend that getting that usage, at almost minimum salary is not what you're looking for, when people were already willing to pay like $7K for Le'Veon Bell when he's been completely inefficient this year, then you're crazy to say that you're not interested in that. So I totally get all the Bilal Powell here. I had him too. Had a lot of Freeman. And then he went Bucks defense and Texans defense. But yeah, full out Niners and Saints game stacks.
Yeah. So he's a good friend of mine. We were talking during the games, and he told me he was just full on this game. We had talked about, I thought this game was fantastic. I absolutely love this game from a point where no one's going to be on it. It's just, I had a lot of Kamara in this game, and I was just like, man, that was frustrating. So a lot of Kittle I thought was the right play. And then if you wanted Breeze, I actually didn't have any Breeze with Kamara. I actually had him a lot with Michael Thomas and or Cook. But even then, it was just tough to kind of peg them all correctly and make the lineups with perfect fillers around them. So yeah, he told me he was on this game, and look at that. It was I guess he was on the perfect game for the week. When that happens, man, you have some pretty good weeks. So it depends on how much risk one wants to take, right?
Yeah, it certainly worked out for him, to say the least. Taking a look at the slant as well. I want to pull up the top lineup here and see what we get, because it's a pretty big contest. $40,000 to first. So who got the win here? 99. The hell is this guy's name, Manny? 99. Slicks Posse.
Slicks Posse, I guess. I don't know.
99's Licks.
By the way,
Posse.
funny how it works. The second guy who ran 150 and cashed 129 of his lineups actually profited more than the guy who won first place.
Isn't that crazy? Wow, look at that. You're right. That's incredible. The guy that won first place in the Millie Maker played 1 lineup. The guy that shipped the $9 played 2 lineups.
Yep.
That's a crazy week, man. And it appears as though he did it without the services of Emmanuel Sanders. You look at that exposure sum, 70%. He was $2 shy of the 50K cap. Breeze at 3%. You ready for this? Mixon at 3. Gordon at 14. A.J. Brown at 5.8. Debo Samuel at 2.7. Thomas at 15. Cook at 3. Kittle at 12. Colts at 10. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 players at 5 or 5 or fewer percent. 4 of them at 3 or less. That's insane.
Yeah, no, it was one of those things to where you kind of just got lucky, really, right? You kind of just got, I wouldn't even say lucky, it's just you hit it perfectly. Like, how often does this happen? I'm not sure that happens. That happens many times. Anytime, I've never had that feeling, but anytime you can have like the perfect players as your top owned, how good must that feel, man?
I mean, yeah.
How good was that? That must be the nuts. The nuts.
Got a 5-player Saints Niners stack.
That must be the nuts. I would love to when the game goes like that. I mean, I would love to have that as my core.
We should probably take a look at the guy that cashed 129 of 150, huh?
What a stud, I guess. Time machine is what he used.
Yeah, he had 15 lineups in the top 100. It's insane.
Come on, man. Like, what do you do? Kittle almost locked. Michael Thomas almost locked. Garoppolo, his highest quarterback by far. Come on.
Garoppolo 61, Breeze 22. So what? 83% of his quarterbacks were from the same game. Then he went with like trace amounts of Devlin Hodges and Kyler Murray and Andy Dalton and Mayfield. Wow, that's something else. He even had a Drew Lock lineup. Would you look at that, Manny?
Yeah, no. When you're on, dude, you're on, man. And first of all, how would you land on Drew Lock? I have no idea. Did you even like? He had 2 Watson lineups and 1 Lock lineup, so he just knew Lock was gonna just destroy this Houston team or something. Like,
I mean, I'm assuming that lineup just squeaked in there, but
you know, there are some pretty good players, dude. There are some pretty good players out there that. Because so many people play fantasy that we don't know of. And, man, every time I see some of this stuff, it's just like, obviously we can't cover all our bases, even with 150 lineups. But, man, some guys just hit the nuts and go with huge risks to the point where I don't want to say that's the only way you can get there. But, man, I'd love to feel this just once, dude. I'm going to lock in Garoppolo to Kittle, Sanders, and bring it back with Thomas. Lock them on and see what happens. Yeah, just to like get the feeling.
Hey, he had Sanders, Kittle, Thomas, Garoppolo. I thought he had one more. Oh no, that was the guy above us. Yeah.
Yeah, so, correct.
God. 95% George Kittle, 27% Jared Cook. So he had 183 total shares of Kittle and Jared Cook.
I thought that's pretty good, man. That's pretty darn good if you ask me.
Meaning he flexed Cook into a lot of these lineups. You can see it.
Double tight end, yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Well, pretty much almost every single Cook lineup had Kittle in it.
Yeah, so I can tell you exactly. There were 37 Kittle Cook lineups.
Yep. And how about this? I'll do you one better. He even had 9% Kendrick Bourne.
Are you kidding me, man? Come on, dude. Come on, man.
And in case anybody's wondering why that's ridiculous, well, Kendrick Bourne caught 3 passes for 18 yards, and 2 of them were touchdowns.
I would go play the lotto. I always say it, man. Why are you guys playing fantasy, dude? If you're going to project something like this, go project the winning numbers in the Powerball, dude. Why on earth are you here playing DFS?
Absolutely crazy, man. You can tell, like, however he's using leverage scores, he's doing something significant there because you're still getting guys like Thomas at high ownership and Kittle. But when you're pulling in Marvin Jones, who I thought was a decent tournament play, it just happens that David Blau is bad. When you're pulling in Kendrick Bourne, Keenan Allen, Curtis Samuel, a lot of these guys are just super low owned. They're doing something in terms of leverage scores, and I think that makes and Joe Mixon at that ownership, Kenyon Drake, Austin Ekeler, Patrick Laird.
Stud, bro. Stud. It's just like, I don't know, man. I feel like you can get in trouble with that too, right? So I don't think leverage score is the end all be all, but it can definitely help you get to some of these lower owned guys. And then if you want to take a risk on some of those guys, you're like multiplying your risk almost to the point where go big or go home. You are taking that to an extreme. And dude, when it hits, there you go, man. When it hits, that's massive.
That's right. If you haven't used the sign-up code NFL Strategy, all one word, you can do that to get 50% off your first month of Awesemo Plus membership. Platinum, Awesemo Plus, all access passes, 50% off your first month. Just use the sign-up code NFL Strategy, one word. Go to awesemo.com/join and head over there today. Scroll to the bottom, too, if you want to check out all of the video tutorials on how to use our best tools and what they're used for and the best way to utilize them, because we get that question a lot. We don't want you to dive in head first. We want you to know exactly what you're getting before you sign up, so you're confident in doing so. NFL Strategy will get you 50% off your first month. Go to awesemo.com/join and see your way around before you do. And when you do sign up, head over to the NFL or the premium Slack chat and say what's up. We'll show you around. Manny, all right, a few minutes to go here. Take a look at the optimal lineup on Yahoo, our sponsor. Tannehill. Oh, no, you know what? That's the late game. Let's pull up the main game, 14 games. And you've got, remember last week was like $150 out of 200, which is insane.
Ridiculous.
Breeze, Aaron Jones, Austin Ekeler, Michael Thomas, A.J. Brown, Manny Sanders, Jared Cook, Mixon, and Steelers. So again, Breeze, Thomas, Sanders, and Cook, all 4 players from the same game in the optimal lineup on Yahoo, 246.6 fantasy points.
Fantastic. I absolutely love it, man. It was almost the same one that took down the Millie or really close. AJ Brown. Yeah. I think maybe Robbie Anderson would have been in there, but and that one used 197 out of the 200, right? So a much better lineup, one that's much easier to get to, one that makes sense, man. And I loved it. It was, I don't want to say it was easy to see because I'm hindsighting, of course, but were all the players viable? Yeah, man, they really were. It was just, how do we get better? So last week we did the show and a lot of people liked when we went over what went wrong, right? And I think we could do that to close out the show, right? We can go over things that went wrong, didn't go our way, because we talk about the winners often because we like to learn from them, but what went wrong and what was just still a good process, but just didn't work out, right? Guys like Mike Evans, you're not going to beat yourself over because that's unfortunate what happened, right? Guys like Devontae Parker, unfortunate that it happened. Were they good plays? Yeah. I was also on plays, and you mentioned Marvin Jones, another one that was a great play. So if you weren't really on Aaron Jones, Ekeler, A.J. Brown, and Sanders and Garoppolo or whatever, it wasn't that you have a bad process or anything. It's just they were further down the list. And maybe some of the guys that you had above them were still really good. I had a bunch of guys that I had above them, and that's who I played, and it just didn't pan out. If you had Watson, did you think Denver was going to go in there and wax these guys? I did not. I had no clue. Did I think Tom Brady was going to do that bad and get wrecked? No, I did not think that either. Pat Mahomes didn't do much. Like, there were so many guys that underperformed. I didn't think Powell, if you told me he was going to have 22 touches, did I think he was not going to do anything with that, even at 3K? I did not. So, that doesn't mean we were wrong per se. It's just, again, there's a lot of variance in NFL, and things yesterday didn't go our way.
Yeah, and you're going to hear people be like, yeah, but dude, the Jets offensive line sucks. Yeah, and the Miami Dolphins run defense is one of the worst in the league, even if they've shown some improvement lately. Again, if I told you, and you just said that Bilal Powell is going to see 22 looks and 19 carries, at that price, you're playing him every time.
Yeah, every single time. If I gave you the number, if everyone in DFS knew the number beforehand, I don't think there'd be a single person that would say no. I mean, why would you? He was almost min salary against the Dolphins at home, favorite, 22 looks. Come on, man. Don't try to hindsight stuff and say why things were a bad play or try to find a reason for everything. That's just how NFL is. That's why we differentiate and try to not go all in on one thing, and hopefully we don't lose 100% of our action on one day. It's why we differentiate. But were they good plays? Yeah, fantastic plays. They just didn't work out.
Yeah, and both of us. I'm very willing to talk about plays that are bad. That that make a bad play, or I missed somebody. Like, did we miss New Orleans, San Francisco?
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, and Jeremy Savage says, I had Powell but didn't love the play. Well, that's kind of the point, though. Like, you're never going to love Bilal Powell, but knowing that he's getting those opportunities, and he was primed to get the bulk of the opportunity with Le'Veon Bell out, you don't have to love him. You just have to know that at that price point, a touchdown from Bilal Powell and everything changes at that, right? Like,
oh, yeah.
Everything changes. But, and there's some bad plays too. See, like I said, Jason AP. What did I tell you? Who someone would say? Jets O-line is just too bad. Probably will fade their running backs for the rest of the year. Like, 22 it doesn't matter. You get that type of work, you're still put in the position. And like I said, Le'Veon Bell was still going to have ownership. Like Le'Veon Bell was still primed to get ownership at 7,200. I was not on Le'Veon Bell at that price. It's insane. He doesn't have a 20-yard carry all season. But if you're literally paying half the price, I don't really care what the line looks like. And you have to consider that Miami defensively literally has a bottom 3 run defense. So there's many ways that I could explain why the Jets off blocking is not as important in that specific matchup.
No, yeah, I agree with you completely. You're the king of volume over efficiency, right?
For sure.
And
that's why I do it again.
Yeah, you have the volume, man. That's all it is. I'm in your camp too. It was way too good of a projection at that price to pass up. That's how I look at it.
Oh, and another thing too. There's the one issue here would be like the fact that Bilal Powell's 10 point whatever points isn't going to kill you. It was a lot of it being that there were a lot of other great running backs that went off. But let me give you an example.
Sure.
This guy that had 150 and finished with 129 in the money, he finished 17th with the Bilal Powell lineup.
Yep.
You know, I bet I could find the Bilal Powell lineup in the top 10. It would not be a surprise at all. Like we said, the guy that won the Millie Maker had a 5 from Austin Hooper. So when you're getting at 3,500, 11 fantasy points, and it allows you to get Aaron Jones and Michael Thomas and Austin Ekeler and everybody else that you had, it's kind of all you need in a spot like that. Everyone didn't have to go off here. So Bilal Powell was the last thing that would hurt you on a week like this.
Yeah, for sure. Again, don't try hindsighting. That's not the way to learn here. It's a process thing, and just be honest with yourself. If like a lot of people just like to explain everything, just be honest. That's all you can do. Like truly make yourself better. Don't find an excuse of why things happen, because then you're never going to get better and you're just going to think you did it the right way every time, or change your process every time. And obviously changing every single week isn't going to do you any good.
Also had some injuries, and you know what? Devontae Parker, Mike Evans, Ryan Griffin, there's nothing you can do about that either.
Yep. Jared Cook, nothing you could do about it. There were just some guys that went down even after they scored, like Mike Evans, like Jared Cook, that went down, and the game could have been completely different if they were still in the game. You know what I mean? Lineups could have been completely different if they were still in the game. So, so many things changed because of injuries too. It's one of those things to where, again, just don't just take everything at face value. A lot of things didn't go because of variance, didn't go anyone's way.
All right, Manny, where can everybody find you?
Yeah, my Twitter's at @mlaura. I think you see it here right in the little square little thingy, my webcam thing. You could find all my work on Fantasy Cruncher. You guys use our tools anyway, so anytime any of you needs help, feel free to reach out. And then you could catch my live streams, which usually go live right after this, at twitch.tv/mlaura.
All right, follow me. Hit me up at Laffy_D on Twitter, LOUGHY_D. We'll have some fun. And thanks as always for hanging out, guys. It's always fun breaking this stuff down with you after either good or bad weeks or indifferent weeks. It's great to be able to go over all of this together. And I think we've made a fun show of this, Manny, and a pretty informative one this season. Look forward to keeping it going and close out the year. If you guys enjoy the show, hit us with a thumbs up, like the video. It helps support us so we can continue to put free content out here at youtube.com/Awesemo. Subscribe, hit the notification bell as well, so you always know when content's going to drop next. And again, appreciate all you guys hanging out with us. We'll see you back here tomorrow, Sal Vetri, myself, on the NFL Strategy Show.